Thanks so much for sticking with us here on No Apologies. To conclude the evening, we are talking to the Speaker of the House in North Dakota, and the House of Representatives Speaker of the House, Kim Koppelman, is from West Fargo, North Dakota, a Republican, and we are pleased to have you on the show to talk about a very special event, Kim. This is it's a Harvest Leadership Prayer Breakfast. It's the 26th. That is a lot of years to have an event.
Correct. And it started, they've skipped a few years, many years ago. It started in 1978, so it's been around for a while.
That is incredible. This year, you have it scheduled for Saturday, the 15th of October. At what time in the morning does it begin?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock in the morning. But you have, I'm guessing each year you have a great keynote, but this year is fantastic.
It really is. And actually, he's back for the second time. About 9 years ago, David Barton, who some of your listeners may be familiar with, and those that are not familiar, I would hope they would come and hear him and also become familiar, because he is, I believe, probably the best historian, and best is obviously a judgmental word, but in my opinion at least, he's the best historian in the country right now. He has probably the largest collection of original founders' documents in his museum in Aledo, Texas, near Fort Worth. He is an author, has written numerous books, has produced many videos. He has a podcast. He's done a lot of things. He's led tours of the U.S. Capitol, pointing out important points about our nation's history. He hosts a legislative conference every November in Dallas, and I've had the privilege of not only attending that many times, but also being a speaker a couple of times. And David's become a friend of mine, and I'm honored to say that, because as those of your listeners who are familiar with him know, he is just a powerhouse when it comes to American history. I believe they would be really in for a treat if they can make it to the prayer breakfast. And we have a great lineup. We also have some wonderful music. Kathy Brecky, who some of your listeners maybe, or your viewers may be familiar with, is going to be providing music and so on. But David is clearly the draw.
Well, I would love to see him too, because I've seen his videos. I was introduced to him because I followed Rick Green, and I know that Rick Green and David Barton have done things before, particularly great training on constitutional things.
Yes, and Rick was, I think, maybe a one-term legislator in Texas years ago, and then began working with David and started something called the Patriot Academy. And right. They still do some things together, but he's largely is doing a lot of things on his own as well. But yeah, David mentored Rick. That's true.
So what will David Barton be presenting on when he comes to the prayer breakfast? Do you have information about his topic, or?
Well, I spoke with him just the other day, and I think one of the things he's going to touch on, because I asked him that question, is he's going to be talking a little bit about the significance of prayer in our nation. What has been the history of prayer and answered prayer in the United States of America? That's kind of an interesting question. But he is so good about focusing on the role that faith played, not only in our founding, but in our nation's history since then. And so I'm sure he'll be talking about some of that as well. And those of you that have heard him, he crams a lot into a time period. He talks very fast. When he's written books, he is one of the heaviest footnoted authors I've ever read. It's like reading a college textbook. So he's very scholarly. He backs things up with facts and information. And, we're living in an age where I think we hear so much revisionist history that it's going to be refreshing to hear the true story. And that's why we're titling this Our True American History.
Our True American History. I see it on the poster here. I've got it. Backed by popular demand, David Barton. Now, it is at the Fargo Holiday Inn, and is this where is it usually held in the same place every year, or tell me a little bit about the history?
It's usually held in the Fargo, West Fargo area. A lot of communities have mayor's prayer breakfasts, and we have several municipalities in our area here, so we don't call it a mayor's prayer breakfast, although the Fargo mayor will be there to give a welcome this time. And last year, West Fargo's mayor was there, and so on. But, it was actually this group that went to Bismarck when Ed Schaefer was the governor and said, we've got this idea. Why don't you start a governor's prayer breakfast? And Ed said, why wouldn't we do that? And that's how the governor's prayer breakfast was born. So this one has been around for a long time, and we've moved it around a little bit, but it's most often been at the Holiday Inn. Great facility. That's where it'll be this time again. And if people are interested in getting tickets, there's a few ways they can do it. If they're in the Fargo area, there's a bookstore called Hurley's on South University Drive in Fargo. They have tickets available. You can also get them through Eventbrite. You can go to the Facebook page, the Harvest Leadership Prayer Breakfast Facebook page, or you can go to the website, which is prayerbreakfast.net. And any of those locations have tickets available. If you happen to know anyone on the Valley Christian Leadership Association board, which is what I chair, the group that plans this, we all have tickets in our pockets, so you can grab them from us as well. They're a little more expensive at the door, but they're available there as well. If you can buy them in advance, you'll save a few bucks and give us a better head count, so we appreciate that as well.
I wanted to hear more about your Valley Christian Leadership Association that we were talking about there too. Long-standing group, obviously.
Yes. Yeah, it's been around, as I said, 1978, the year the Prayer Breakfast was founded, is when that was founded as well. And there was a fellow named Art Grimstead who was really a spiritual mentor to a lot of, especially businessmen in the community. And I attended his Bible studies for over 30 years. He was a pastor and a professor at Concordia College, but very interdenominational. And it was a great experience to meet with other men and dig into God's Word together. And that's what we've done over the years. And Howard Dahl, who's also a very noted local area businessman, Howard and Art kind of got together and started this, and it spread from there. And many of us have been involved for a lot of years since.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful event. How long does it last? For a couple hours or? Yeah,
an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, that kind of thing. And we want to make sure we respect people's time, so we don't want to drag on and on. Although I'll tell you, the last time David Barton spoke for us 9 years ago, people were hanging on every word, wanting him to continue and speak longer. And we'll probably take some time for questions and answers if people have them. And they were clamoring to get him to come back the very next year. And we didn't feel we wanted to do that, but the demand has not died down. So 9 years later, I was pleased to offer the invitation and that he accepted. And we look forward to having him with us. So about an hour and a half, and it's a Bison home game. If you have any NDSU Bison fans in your audience and they're coming into town for the game, come a little early, go to the prayer breakfast, and then go to the Bison game.
Great idea. Over the years, well, in this last minute, can you give us some of the names of some of the other people that you've had speak at your prayer breakfast?
Yes. Well, over the years, way back, I mean, people like Chuck Colson.
Oh, wow.
The late Chuck Colson. We had Al Quie, who was the governor of Minnesota, who was a congressman, actually knew and worked with Chuck Colson back in those days. People like that. We've had a friend of mine a few years ago who was very, very popular, had a tremendous presentation, a guy named Brian Birdwell, who's actually in the Texas State Senate. And he was a colonel at the Pentagon on 9/11. The plane that hit the Pentagon went in right at his office.
Wow.
And the only reason he was alive, he modestly, almost jokingly says, is he was down the hall at the men's room.
Oh,
but it was tragic. His entire
Well,
staff killed. He was so badly burned. It took years of surgeries to recuperate, and his story was amazing. Faith story as well.
Well, thank you so much, Kim, for all of the information about this. This is the Prayer Breakfast, the Harvest Leadership Prayer Breakfast on Saturday in Fargo. Get more information online. Thank you so much for being on the program. I very much appreciate it.